Hey, what's up everybody? Bill DeFreitas for the GCVC, and thank you for checking out another interview. This week, we sat down with professional fighter and jiu-jitsu brown belt Vinny Dias. Training out of Toronto and Niagara, Vinny is 2-0 professionally, finishing both fights by submission. He's fighting this weekend in London in the semi-finals of BTC's $10,000 Bantamweight Tournament. You're not going to want to miss this one. There's tons of talented Canadians on the card. Quick warning, the background noise is pretty brutal at the start, but gets better a couple minutes in. My apologies. But thanks again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to help support Canadian grappling, and enjoy the interview. Niagara top team, just for the wrestling practice with Vinny Dias. Vinny, thank you very much for joining me here. Just off the bat, just when and where did you get started? You started very young, so.
Yeah, so I started Jitsu when I was 8. I started along with kickboxing as well. I started at a gym run by Shaw Franco. There's a lot of pro fighters. There's a lot of pro fighters around the gym when I started, so I kind of immediately had the idea of doing MMA when I started kickboxing and jiu-jitsu. So from the first day that I started grappling and striking, I've always kind of had the idea in the back of my head that eventually I kind of wanted to be able to combine them and have a full arsenal of weapons to kind of work with. I always felt like you weren't a real fighter unless you could grapple and strike. That was kind of my mentality from day one. Like, you kind of have to know how to do everything. I was never happy just knowing how to strike or just knowing how to grapple. I felt like to be a real fighter, you have to know both.
Yeah, right on. I noticed I just do like the Instagram dive to see what see your past, and man, you had fights from, you're 23 now, and you have pictures up from 2015. So it looks like you had your first fight 3 days after your 17th birthday.
Yeah.
What's going on in your head being 17 years old, knowing you're going to fight like grown men? What was going on in your head those days?
It was honestly really exciting. Like, I mean, it's not the same at all, but I've been in a lot of like fights and stuff on the street, so I wasn't really concerned with fighting. I was actually, for my first fight, was one of like, I think it was the least nervous I ever got for a fight. Really? Yeah, I was just like excited to go in there and fight somebody. And also, like, I didn't really have that good enough idea of like exactly what I was getting into yet. Like, the more you know what you're getting into, the more you kind of plan, the more you think. I just felt like I was so new to it that I wasn't even fazed by it, because I didn't even know what to be fazed by yet. Like, I just was 100% sure that I was gonna go in there and just beat the shit out of this guy. And I ended up getting a finish in 20 seconds.
See, that's crazy, because I think about myself at 17, I was just like a hairless little fat kid that would have been scared shitless. So like,
hilarious.
That's cool. So you didn't even think about it. You was just like, let's.
No, I was like, I'm gonna submit this guy like really quick. I was like 100% sure of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was almost. I wouldn't even call it confident. Like, it was like borderline delusional. Like, I was so confident that like nothing was gonna happen to me. Like, and I was just gonna like finish this guy.
You need that though, right? Like, you said that those like little seeds of doubt are what's gonna make you lose. So
yeah, but I also think there is a difference between confidence and delusion, and like having kind of like blind faith isn't also the best thing in the world either. Like, you want to have confidence, but you want to understand what you're getting yourself into, right? You don't want to just think you're going to win because you don't understand the situation that you're walking into. And that's kind of what it was. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to win because I know exactly what's going to happen. It's like, I had no idea what was going to happen, and I still was 100% sure I was going to win. So it's kind of, my mindset's changed to the point where like I'm still as confident, but it's not delusion anymore. Like, I really do know what the fuck's going on now. Whereas like when we first started off, I was just confident in the game.
How many guys do you think just stay in that delusional state?
A lot. I think a lot of guys stay in that delusional state. I think it takes a loss to bring you out of that, to be honest. And I think as an amateur, a loss is one of the best things you can have. And like I kind of had that delusional state of mind until I lost a split decision as an amateur, and it kind of made me realize that you really got to cover all bases before you get into a fight. You can't just leave it to chance. But I think a lot of guys do remain in that delusional state until they lose, and then they understand that like this can't happen to you.
Fair enough. So yeah, I guess that's a good thing that it happened.
Yeah,
so
no,
early, right?
I think honestly, man, I think every amateur should lose once. Like I think a part of being an amateur is experiencing losses. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't want the first time you experience a loss to be as a professional. You know, like I know how to handle losses. Like I've been competing since I was 8, but it's different when it's MMA. So I do think losing is part of like a good amateur career will have a loss in there. I think it's something that you can learn a lot from and bring that experience into the pros.
Yeah, man, for sure. And like I said before, obviously you're mainly a fighter, right? But you have a huge accomplished grappling background. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is when I talk to a lot of other guys and I say, who's got the jits? Your name comes up quite often. And I'm, again, looking through your Instagram, you have heel hook finishes at NAGA back in like 2016. Around here, that's a bit ahead of the curve as far as leg locks go. Who were you kind of training under at that point? Who can you thank for your leg lock game?
Oh man, there's one guy in particular that introduced me to leg locks. His name's Robert Tremito. We call him Bobby, Toothless Bobby. He was like one of my best friends. He was actually the guy that got me into leg locks and no-gi. So like I was training at a gym out in Ajax, and I pretty much did gi all the way from like 8 until about like I was like 15. So I did like 7 years only in the gi. And then I met this guy Bobby, and he was really good purple belt at the time, very good leg locker, like into all the Eddie Bravo 10th Planet stuff. And we started playing around with, like he started showing me leg locks. He's like 10 years older than me, and he was just like showing me all this crazy stuff, all this no-gi, and we got really into it together. And we were kind of like you said, I had heel hook finishes like since I was like a blue belt, like 16, going to Naga. So I kind of already knew a little bit about leg locks, and then when Danaher first dropped like his original leg lock DVD, Bobby gave me a copy, and like from then on, like we really learned how to do things properly. Like we kind of had an idea of what leg locks were, and we kind of like knew like we were playing the game. And he's the one that introduced me to that stuff. But then once the Danaher stuff came out, like it gave us a very like clear way, like clear steps on how to do it properly. We had an overall idea, and we'd both been grappling for a long time, so we kind of like it was good to implement. But like I said, when that Danaher stuff came out, it changed it for us, and like we started getting really clean and effective. So
yeah, those DVDs have basically changed the game around here over the last few years. A ton of people are kind of teaching. You can tell people are teaching like basically based off those DVDs.
Yeah.
But yeah, back in 2016 was very much a new thing.
Yeah.
And, I just wanted to ask you about that. But sticking on the topic of leg locks in MMA, a lot of people say like you can't do them, you're just gonna get knocked out, this and that. And we've seen varying degrees of success, but with guys like Gary Tonin and possibly Gordon Ryan getting into MMA, do you think they can have success with leg locks at like, the highest level?
Yeah, so I think success with leg locks in MMA has to do with a couple things. First one is keeping your opponent off balance. So if you can keep your opponent off balance as you're attacking them, as you're attacking their legs, I think you'll be successful. The entries that are going to get you into trouble is one where your opponent can keep his center of gravity within his base of support. If he can do that, he can land some good shots. So as long as you can keep him off balance, you're going to be looking good. The other thing, other situation I like to attack them from is failed sweeps. So if I'm trying to sweep somebody, they start trying to base out, they kind of open themselves up for it. I don't like the idea of falling back from top position to hit leg locks. I think you're safer using them off your back, but the main thing is keeping them off balance and controlling the distance between your head and their head. My head's really close, he can reach it. If you can't reach my head, you can't hit it. So as long as you keep your opponents off balance, and manage the distance, you should be okay. But you have to really understand what's going on to be able to keep them off balance and manage distance. The other thing is, people often get too horny for the finish. So like they attack with leg lock, and what they focus on is breaking your leg, getting the heel hook. They don't get the heel hook, and then they're fucked. It's really important to understand that, like, if they are working to escape, you have to use those reactions to chain more parts of your game to that. So you can't be like dead end focused on getting the finish if you're going to attack leg locks in MMA, because you can end up on your back. If you're in a position where the finish seems like it's going to be difficult, you got to build to something else. So if you keep those three things in mind. Keep your opponent off balance, manage distance, and don't get horny for the finish. Be just as happy with positional advancement as you are with the submission. You should be safe and should be successful. But it's definitely, the punches do change things, but like I said, if you're already on the bottom in MMA, like, it's not going to be nice.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, taking leg locks out isn't necessarily going to make you more effective off your back. You just got to change the way that you play it a little bit and just be more careful.
Fair enough. I think that last point is the most important. The, like, kind of blowing your wad, going for the finish way too fast. You see that all the time.
Yeah.
There's like no control of the hip and the guys are straining.
Yeah.
And you see them eat those punches.
Yeah.
Just naked face.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, you can't get caught up in trying to go for the finish.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you about is you have like a super technical game, and when I was at the class that you taught, very good teacher and well-rounded as well. How do you like to develop your game? It's kind of a broad question, but one thing I kind of like to ask is, when do you give up on a technique? Like, we all try to learn techniques and we find techniques that work for us. How long do you put time into something before you're like, okay, maybe this just doesn't work for me?
It's a good question. I like that question. So I know, so the way I look at techniques isn't necessarily if something works for me or not. I like to focus on techniques that have easy follow-ups. So if I fail this move, what can I chain onto it, right? So what I like to focus on is, I have a general like system that I play with my game, and everything has to chain together. So like, if I were to play my game through with somebody who understands how to defend what I do, I would essentially never stop attacking them. Like, I would go from attack to attack to attack to attack to attack. I don't focus on things that don't fit into the chain of attack. So if I can't connect a certain technique with the rest of my game, I don't focus on it. However, if a technique can be fit into the rest of the game, then I will never give up on it. And it's not a very clear explanation. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is that from any given situation, there's going to be a number of reactions that my partner can hit. I need a technique or two for every reaction that he can hit, right? So as long as I'm in whatever situation I'm in, if there's a good purpose for using the technique, I'll never give up on it. However, if there's no real benefit to using it, like if it just kind of it doesn't lead me into a next attack that's failed, that's when I'll kind of like leave something out of the game. I don't like to attack things where like I go for them, and if I don't get them, I'm stuck in a bad position. I like to attack submissions and attack positions where if I don't get what I'm looking for, I can immediately move on to something else. And if a new technique per se fits in that chain by covering a certain reaction that my opponent has, I won't give up on it. I'll work it because it makes sense to be part of my game. And I think anything can be developed. Like, I don't think there's necessarily like this technique's for me and this one's not. I think anything you spend time on and you train intelligently can work itself into your game. For example, let's say slipping, right? When my boxing coach first started teaching me how to slip, I was just like, man, I'm never gonna be able to do this shit. Like, slipping punches, like, that's not really what I like to do. But realistically, slipping punches is part of defense in boxing. If you want to call yourself good at boxing, you have to know how to slip. So I trusted him, I worked on it with him, and all of a sudden I'm sparring, I start slipping punches without even thinking of it. Right? So a technique I thought wouldn't necessarily work out for me, I trusted in my coach's process of developing that skill, and it came out. So it just kind of showed up by itself. So I trust in the development of the coaches. And that's, like I said, even if I don't necessarily see myself doing this in competition or doing this in training, if it's something that has to be implemented into the game eventually, I feel like if you put time into it, it will work itself in there, even if it's something that feels just like kind of unnatural to begin with.
Okay.
As long as you put in the training development, it'll show up in there.
And when it comes to the training and development, kind of adding skills to your game, are you doing that yourself and deciding what you need to work on, or are you leaving that up to your coaches?
Both.
Both?
Yeah, both. I think it's important. Like especially once you get to like brown belt level, it's a lot of like homework. Like you have to do a lot of stuff yourself. Coaches can only do so much. Like if all you do is go to the gym once, twice a day, listen to what your coach has to say, go home and fuck off, you're not gonna make that much progress. Right? But like if you're going home and you're studying matches, you're watching instructionals, you're watching fights, like you're gonna come to conclusions yourself. And then you can go back, talk to your coaches about it, see what they think. But you have to do the work too. It can't just be the coach trying to teach you. Like you have to go out on your own and try to learn the game as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of answers like the next kind of question I'm going to ask here, which is I watched one of your interviews that you did recently, and you talked about doing all the little things right. Yeah. And I hear people say that too, and it seems kind of like it's a bit of a vague answer when you actually think about it. So obviously studying on your own, but what are kind of some of the other little things that you do that you think other people kind of neglect?
Studying is a big one. Nutrition is another big one. Recovery is very important. Strength work, injury prevention. There's a lot, man. Taking all the right supplements, making sure you're getting enough sleep.
So this is like a whole other video in itself.
Yeah, like there's a lot to it. Like it's everything if everybody comes to the gym and works hard, like it's about what you're doing the other 20 hours of the day that you're not in the gym, right? Like it's, when you think about it, you're in the gym like 4 or 5 hours a day, maybe more, but you're spending between like 20 and 15 hours outside the gym. That's a long time in comparison to how much time you're actually here. So it's really important you're making the most out of those hours as well, right? Everybody makes the most out of what they're doing in the gym. Yeah. But like there's a lot of time that you spent not in the gym. Like what are you doing in that time?
That's funny. That's what I ask a lot of the high level people is like everybody's working. It's exactly what you said. Like everybody's working hard. You know, there's nobody that comes to the gym and kind of just slacks. Maybe a day here and there, but for the most part, everybody's busting their ass. So yeah, what is it that makes the difference at the high levels? And it's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's exactly what.
So you have a fight coming up soon.
Yeah.
Can you just let me know when it is, where it is, and who you're fighting?
Yeah. It's gonna be March 5th in London, Ontario for BTC. Fighting Izzuddin Atma. It's going to be a good fight. I'm excited. Good striker versus grappler matchup. Should be very interesting. Make sure you guys tune in.
All right, man. And do you have any grappling matches or tournaments coming up in mind, or are you just focused on MMA right now?
No, right now I have an exclusive contract with BTC because of the tournament, so I can't actually compete outside of the promotion until the tournament is over.
Good luck, man. Appreciate the time for doing this. If you have any sponsors you want to shout out, go ahead right now.
Shout out to Mo's Health and Performance, always keeping me healthy. Tischler Custom Homes. And just shout out to all the gyms that I work with. Niagara Top Team, Grants MMA, the Mat Factory. And last quick shout out to Chalk for all the great supplements. So thank you guys. Awesome.
Thanks again for watching. Don't miss Vinny fight this weekend as part of BTC's $10,000 Bantamweight Tournament on pay-per-view. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help support Canadian grappling. And we'll see you soon.